Bloom effect is used to reproduce the imaging artifact of real-world cameras. It happens when the camera lenses are pointed directly toward a bright object or a light source. This will cause a bright halo with column or line effect around the highlight. When using the HDR in Unity, the bloom will affect only the bright areas. To add the bloom effect, go to Add Effect, Unity, then Bloom. Bloom has quite few options to configure. Intensity, which is the strength of the bloom filter. Threshold filters out pixels by their level of brightness. With properly exposed HDR scenes like ours, the threshold should be set to 1, so that pixels with values above 1 leak into surrounding objects. Softening makes a gradual transition for the bloom effect. 0 is a hard threshold, while 1 is a soft threshold. Clamp. This clamps the pixels to control the bloom amount. Diffusion. This changes the extent of veiling effect. For highest quality, make sure your values are whole integer. It's advised not to animate this value, as it may cause small hiccups in the perceived data. Anamorphic ratio. This distorts bloom to give anamorphic look. Negative values distort vertically, while positive values distort horizontally. Color. This determines the bloom color. Fast mode. This toggle option lowers the quality of the bloom to boost performance. It's generally recommended for mobile and low-end platforms. Dirtiness is an interesting property that we can work with. Lens dirt texture can apply a full screen texture mask to create smudge or dust to diffract the bloom. Intensity adjusts the strength of the texture diffraction on the bloom filter. Reset the values. Select the camera, then go to the game view. The post-processing stack comes with an interesting component that can help us debug several complicated filters. Go to Add Component and add Post-Process Debug. The debug overlay has a number of options that we can switch from. As an example, if you select color blindness simulation, you'll get 3 types of color blindness: deuteranopia, protanopia, and tritanopia, and it will show you how a colorblind user will see your game. And as we already added the ambient occlusion effect, we can also debug it. When you select it, the scene will be black whenever the ambient occlusion is in the environment. You can see that the range of the ambient occlusion is somehow overused, so I'm going to decrease it until I found a suitable value for the scene. To debug the bloom filter, switch it to bloom buffer, then go back to the post-process volume, then enable the intensity. Once you change the value, you'll notice that the environment becomes darker and only the bright luminant areas start to glow. And that's the result of the bloom buffer debug overlay. After playing around with the intensity, I found that 2 is a good value. Now enable the threshold. As we previously discussed, lower threshold values will make the bloom effect spread around the scene. It's worth noting that the threshold also can be debugged from the post-process debug component. Select the main camera, then change the debug layer to bloom threshold. This will highlight only pixels with values above 1, or in other words, the bright areas. If you start decreasing the threshold value, you'll notice that the scene becomes more and more clear. And if the value is 0, it means that the bloom has no threshold, and it would spread all over the scene. And as our scene is nicely exposed to light, it's reasonable to set the threshold to 1. Leave softening and clamp values as they are, then crank up the diffusion to 8, and the anamorphic ratio to 1 to get a nicely vertical distortion. We don't need to change the bloom color. And if you are using a bad computer, you can check fast mode to gain some performance boost. Under dirtiness, enable texture and its intensity. The post-processing stack comes with several textures that we can use to enhance the visual quality of our environment. To get it, first, you need to lock the inspector, then go to Packages, Post-processing, and post-processing again, then Texture, and finally, go to Lens Dirt. These are high-quality textures that we can use. To test it, you can drag and drop it into the texture slot, then crank up the intensity to see it. I'm going to set it to 4. Choose a texture that you like and also play with the values until you find something that you are happy with. This is it for this video. See you in the next one.